Hi, everybody. This is Rose Odette with the Michigan Innovation Podcast. And today I'm super excited to welcome Cindy Bauer to the podcast. Welcome, Cindy.
Hello, glad to be here.
Yeah, and Cindy is with Coordinista, and it's a very innovative healthcare company that I am so stoked to talk about today from here in Michigan. Very, very cool. But as we do in every single one of our podcasts, is that we really like to get to know the entrepreneur, the founder, the startup, the person with the courage to really go forward with such a big venture. And so that's what we're going to do first, Cindy. If you could just let us know a little bit about yourself, where are you from? How did you get your start? And just a little bit more about Cindy.
Yeah, thanks. Oh my goodness, you said courage. And I think that's so apt and applicable to startup founders. You do have to have this, element of courage, right, to take this on.
That's
Um, and I would think honestly, when we're looking at origin stories and when I think of that courage, it starts before me and it makes me think of my dad, who's immigrant from Germany, and my grandma, who actually in the middle of the night with three little kids crossed the border between East and West Germany. Yeah, during World War II. And that's courage. And and so I guess I got a little bit of it in my DNA. And then my dad ended up starting his own business, tool and die industry in Michigan. And so I got to grow up and see that, and be a part of that. And he always taught me you can do anything if you work hard enough. So that's the beginning of my roots. And then went on to be a speed skater, nationally competitive speed skater. So I always seem to like just start off looking at the world with challenging, going after the hard stuff, I guess. If you
Wow, a speed skater. And what a great history. You've got your family as so are you what they consider second generation? That's
uh, I think so. My dad immigrated here when he was 12.
oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I think that's just great. Did he have an accent?
He did. And it's interesting, Rose, like I wanted to learn German and all of that, but he had, if you can imagine, some really difficult times. He was actually born in Yugoslavia and they were kind of run off their lands. And so they were refugees throughout World War II,
Mm.
moving around to different places. And so his accent, in some ways bothered him, right?
Oh,
Like,
yeah, I can
yes.
imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. So only till later on in life did he start to seem more comfortable. So yeah.
Well, that's really interesting. And then tell us a little bit more about the speed skating. That's a unique, I mean, I watch it in the Olympics, but I've never met a speed skater before. How did that happen?
Yeah, and actually I should have prefaced it by saying roller speed skating and not ice, which they're the same, just different
Different.
items on your feet in different locations, I guess. But so we had a local rink and I was always very athletic and I started, doing those little races and I found out I was pretty good at it and then we happened to have one of the nation's most competitive coaches and teams where I lived. And so I joined the team and with their strong training ethic and everything, quickly
Wow.
went on to compete across the country. And my highlight was I got one. It's called Junior Olympic National Champion, and then it qualified me to train at the Olympic Training Center. So I
Wow.
actually
Is
got to
that
go when
in
I was
Colorado?
16. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Colorado Springs. And so at 16, I got to fly over to the OTC and train there with the world team for a little while. And it was a super cool experience. And I learned a lot about, when you fall, the race isn't over, you get back up. And it's not done till you cross that finish line. So,
Yeah. Oh, that is a wonderful story. My background, I had some competition in my early years. We showed dogs and then I was in some other competition later in my teens. And it really sets you up for that mindset that, hey, I'm going to give this a shot. I'm going to do this. I'm going to give this a shot. And I think that that probably subliminally or very obviously gave you some courage to go forward with your business. And that leads us right into the beginning of your business, Coordinista. So keep going. How did you get Coordinista started, and how did that all come about?
Yeah. So fast forward to went to school at U of M for nursing. So and then ICU nurse, oncology nurse, some hospice, long-term care, and then care management transitions of care was what I've done most recently. And in between that, I'd spent about 6 years using technology in a completely different industry, running campaigns and ballot initiatives. And got very good at that. And that technology, in doing that, deploying volunteers really all over the state to do like telephonic and then door-to-door types of campaigns, um, taught me a lot about decentralized deployment of teams in the field. And then I was recruited back into nursing for an integrated care organization that was providing telephonic and in-home type of care management services across large territories with limited resources. So very similar, so in a decentralized deployment model. So 40, 50 nurses covering a population of 6,000 members. And we didn't have any of the same technology tools that in healthcare as I just got done using in that other industry. So I saw Rose, like nurses, we're crisscrossing each other across counties, wasting all this time, completely unorganized. We had no visibility of where our members were going to be. I would drive 50 miles one day to do a assessment, and then the next day find myself in the same neighborhood doing another assessment down the street. I could have done them on the same day had I known. And I was just amazed at the lack of tools. But we're using best in class software. And
Wow. So let's break that down a little bit on the problem. So, in my experience, I used to work for IBM Corporation, and we always had this dilemma in IBM. Should we focus on cross industry, which is technology that goes into every single industry, or should we work in a vertical? And so I always chose the vertical, and you and I have healthcare in common that way. But the neat thing is that the technology can apply cross industry. So what you're telling me is that you apply technology in one industry, being the voting and the political industry. Now you saw a need in the health industry and you tied it. You're like, well,
right.
hey, this can actually work in this industry as well. The other thing that I just want to say is this whole area of the nursing shortage.
Mhm.
We need nurses so much. We have a shortage of all sorts of, healthcare professionals in general, doctors as well as nurses. But let's talk about nursing. Nursing is so needed across the board. And then to find out that there isn't a coordination of effort going on. So this precious, precious time for nurses is being just wasted behind the steering wheel.
Exactly.
And
I thought I wouldn't run a campaign like this, let alone a company. But this
exactly.
is what's
So that
happening
was the
today in
massive
healthcare.
problem. So you
Yeah.
saw a problem. And so sounds like you came up with a software solution to this problem.
Right. So, but to get there, I had to do one other thing first. So one more thing to add about the problem that's really important is in really what drove me, like people see problems all the time, right? But like what drives you to what's that extra push that is going to make you do all it takes to stand up a solution for that problem, right? And so on one side, because of that problem, I was seeing all these patients being readmitted unnecessarily to the hospital, which that could have been prevented had they been able to see the nurse or get the care, had I been able to reach them in time. There's other issues that goes along with this, like lack of data flow in the field in
But
real
stop right
time.
there. Stop right there, because what you're telling me is that your heart for the patient was really, really affected. You care about these patients that are, suffering through readmission. Who wants to go through that more than once?
Right.
You go through bringing out the cards, you're sitting in that chair, you're just wondering, what are they doing behind that computer? How can I make this thing go along? Will they find something? Will they even admit me? Will they accept my insurance this time? So there's a lot of stress that goes on inside a patient. And you, as a nurse, I'm sure the reason you went to nursing school, I don't know, Cindy, but most nurses that I work with really care deeply about their
Right.
patients, and
Right.
that they want to do whatever they can to stop their suffering. And so, I think that to your point, like, what's going to give you the added gumption to really take this, go all in? And you're saying it was because you saw this need, and from a patient's point of view, which, who does that's really special.
Well, I have this big heart, especially for the elderly population, and that was the population I'm working with and tends to most have readmissions to hospitals. My grandma had lived with me, my Oma, my German grandma growing
Mm.
up, and so I have a lot of compassion, and they're a vulnerable population, and the health system is hard to navigate, even for people who aren't a vulnerable population. So that was the one side. Then the other side was my co-nurses, my peers and social workers who were so frustrated. They're trying to do the job. They want to provide this care, but there's all these administrative barriers and other logistical barriers that I talked about preventing them from reaching this population. So I saw nurses going on antidepressants, a lot of nurses leaving, nurses with their hair falling out, literally.
Mm.
Uh, and so it was like two sides, you saw, and it's like, it doesn't have to be this way. So before I just jumped right into the technology, though, I had this hypothesis. What if I applied what I knew from doing the field deployment in the political industry to healthcare? And so I did that, and I ended up leading the company I was working for. So had to do it all manually because we didn't have the technology. But I ended up reducing readmissions for my provider by over 30%. And I
Wow.
led the whole company across multi-states in their transitions to care pilot program as the top performer.
So, question. Have you ever taken a pencil to paper to do the math behind the return on the investment and the savings? So, one of the things that I always like to do with software develop or software, efficiency and helping people understand the value is that I look at hard savings. So we look
Mhm.
at the hard dollar savings. So before we had, we bought this much paper before, and now we don't have to buy that paper. So it's a true hard savings. And then soft savings, where employees are more efficient. We're still going to pay them a wage, but the wage is going to return much more in that amount of time, which is where I think you're going, because they are making their soft dollars more. I mean, they're not going to not pay the wages, so that's soft. And then improved patient care is another big area of. So, but my question specifically with this 30% you mentioned, have you ever done the math to
I
find out
have,
really
I,
financially what did that mean to your organization?
right. Well, I didn't at the time. At the time, I was truly just focused on my patients and trying to help them
Mhm.
and help them, get the care that they needed so they didn't wind up in the hospital. I have now figured out the dollars because it's part of our value prop as Coordinista, and, a readmission, the average national cost is about 16,000. for a readmission. And then, like you said, you have the soft cost around it as well. Plus you have the quality metric reimbursements that health systems and payers and everybody gets for meeting certain quality measures, and Coordinista helps them meet those quality measures. So there's all sorts of financial value that we bring
And
alongside. Like you said, that patient has a better experience and
exactly. And
loyal.
so,
Yeah.
when you're selling into healthcare, you have so many different stakeholders that you have to answer to. And one of them is this chief financial officer. And, you're speaking their language when you can break it down, break it down, break it down to a financial one. Now, when you're speaking to nursing executives, definitely the quality of care. I mean, you have all different stakeholders, and it sounds like you're very well versed in and really expressing, the need to those different stakeholders as well as the the benefit.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
very
Yeah. And then I had this, like a lot of founders have like a catalyst or something, a trigger, some event that happens that then like, kind of causes them. So I was having that experience, and then the CCO and VP medical director flew in from California to spend the day with me in my car because they're like, what are you doing that's so different? So I'm driving them around, showing them. Um, and they're like, we need to take this company wide. And then, but shortly, like right after, they lost their Michigan contract because of an acquisition. So 150 of us lost our jobs, including me.
wow.
And I was going to start up a care management company because I'd figured out how to do this better, right? And how I can help these population. But Rose, I looked and looked everywhere, and I could not find any technology out there that I would want my nurses to use that I knew that they needed to
Hmm.
do this job well and to do what I did. And so it was so frustrating. And so I said that I guess that's where I need to start. So went down the software path as a nurse. Oh, and it's been awesome. It's been an incredible journey. I've loved it. Have learned so much, and it's been exciting. So
Wow, that is a great, great story. And it sounds like, so how do you help what are you seeing like when you go out in the world today? You've got your software developed, you are out in the market. And so what are you seeing happening in today's environment?
yeah, it's so cool because now we're at the point where we've developed the MVP, or the minimal viable product, right? Which in healthcare has to be robust enough for healthcare. So it has its own set of standards that you need to meet. And so now we're getting to like share it with the market. And this is what was so interesting to me, Rose, early on. So I had that experience with the value-based provider. So there's fee for service and there's value based. And you talked about the different verticals. And so even within healthcare, there's these multiple different verticals. And so I had built Coordinista with that one particular value-based vertical in mind for that population group as a solution to these large enterprise type of customers. But what started happening was, as I was showing
So
it,
can I just
oh,
make sure I'm
yeah.
following you properly? So back in the day, we used to call it the three Ps: the payer, the provider, and the patient.
Mhm.
So were you talking about the payer community?
It was a provider, but it was a value based or risk. It was a provider who was taking on risk, which is like they call them
Managed
sometimes a
care?
paid vider. It's
Okay,
but I'm talking about more of a payer community or pay vider community where they get a certain lump sum of money to take care of
right,
the patient, and they're taking on risk. Um,
exactly.
and so yeah, so that's the market I.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Because I think that it is relevant to know, because in all markets, there are many, like you said, there's verticals. So it sounds to me like this particular, your original idea came through, and the old term would be managed care, where we would have a contract with, let's say, ABC hospital chain to care for, 1,000 lives. And then whether they were sick or well, the risk is on the hospital. Yeah, we're going to take them on for this amount of money, and it's up to us to do it properly and efficiently and meet their needs. And so rather than the payer micromanaging it, they're letting the hospital manage that as well as the cost, the whole equation. So that was your first experience?
Yeah, well, that was my experience in seeing the need for a solution like Coordinista. So I built it with that in mind as the
I
market.
follow you.
So, but then what happened as we were then, as we're building it, we're getting market feedback, trying to like get into our concept, into our UI, UX and all of that, right? So we can have good product market fit. I have an idea, but I want it validated. I
Yeah.
want to make sure everybody else kind of sees the
So
same
you
thing.
mean like the user interface?
Yeah, yeah, sorry.
That's the UI. What's the UX?
User like experience and
Okay, so you were getting feedback on how the software was, do the nurses like it?
yes.
Is it working for
Yeah,
me? And so do I like the way it looks? Just the
yeah,
colors,
early on.
all of that.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
early
that's
on.
very key in software development because
Yeah,
you've heard a million times that if you build it, they might not come.
right, right. So we
So you
just
have to be
started.
very sensitive. And being a nurse, I'm sure you had a leg up there.
Yeah, yeah. So our first milestones were just those like, all right, we're gonna design the clickable UI UX prototypes to get feedback, and then we did a functional mobile app so nurses could actually get it in their hands, and then like dummy data, like hard coded patients in there and try it out. But what was so interesting, so I'm having these nurses, give this feedback, and social workers and physical therapists and other clinicians, and they're all like, I could really use this in home health. Oh my goodness, we need this in hospice. Like, and I kept getting this, from these nurses, because nurses move around and we do a lot of different jobs often, and I'm like, huh. And so then we started, talking to executives and stakeholders in these other verticals in healthcare, and started finding out they have the same challenges, Rose, because they're still deploying decentralized care. And I started seeing that this decentralized deployment model is in about 3/4 of healthcare and across all these different verticals. And so then it was like, wow, this is really interesting. And all of a sudden, it was like, boom, we have this huge pathway to a large, large market. I mean, it was large to start with, but then adding all of that onto it. So that was kind of the interesting thing about what we found out about the market.
That is interesting. Now, the whole push to treat patients where they're at,
Right.
really bringing it down to more of a patient care model rather than, you come to us, and I know I'm using very layman terms here, but it sounds because of that, all these logistical nightmares were coming to the head.
Exactly. And now this market that I'm talking about, like home health and hospice, are more fee for service type of services, prescriptive, that are usually short term, a more prescriptive type of model, but it's still care that people need in their homes. And so as I was building out Coordinista, what also has been happening that I think everybody's been seeing, and yeah, I'm sure you know about, is healthcare has been decentralizing. And to your point about driving care to the home, more and more care is being driven to the home for a couple of reasons. One, it's less expensive than in a hospital setting, right? And we're finding out more and more types of conditions and things can be done outside of the hospital. And number two, consumers are driving it. Who wants to go to the hospital? Who wants to go to a doctor's office? you know?
Right, right.
Um,
And then
yeah,
you have all these wearables and people are really getting more conscious of their health. So I can see that. And with all of those changes happening, what is the future of healthcare, and how do you see, Coordinista keeping pace with all the crazy changes happening?
Oh my goodness, great point. So there's the things we've talked about so far that Coordinista helps with, like with optimization of productivity and time and decreasing administrative and driving waste and all that stuff that's happening right now, right? But healthcare, again, going through that decentralized approach, so these innovative models are starting to pop up around the country. And what is so cool about and I didn't even think about this when I first designed it. And I'm so glad we designed it this way because I think God knew definitely what was coming. But we made Coordinista so it could be customizable for any type of care service. So it's not just like we're a home health solution or a hospice solution, but it can, for any healthcare client, it can be customizable for their service. And so what it, and it, it, uh, it has the flexibility to create innovative models. And so the coolest thing that I think that where we play a part in the future of healthcare is supporting these new innovative models that are coming up that current technology can't support. So, for example, we have a partner that has already signed up for a pilot with Coordinista, who's out in California. It's a company run by a nurse practitioner, a very experienced nurse practitioner in the value-based care market. And he is standing up innovative models where nurses are owning their own practices and working at the top of their scope of practice. And it's all virtual, it's all mobile, and they're deploying nurses out into the field to do all kinds of different services like mental health risk assessments for high-risk populations and transitions of care. And so right now with the current technologies, they're very much like kind of set. A lot of them are legacy technologies. They're difficult to change. They're old technologies that are clunky, and they can't support this type of innovation that we need. And I'll say, let me give one example, transitions of care. That's where my heart is in helping people stay out of the hospital. Right now, it's the approach to transitions of care is once you get discharged, somebody tries to call you from the doctor's office and they want you to do a follow-up appointment, right? Most of the time, people don't do their follow-up appointments. A lot of time with the elderly population, there's a lot of good reasons for that. It's difficult. They lack transportation a lot of times to get to the doctor's office. They have walkers and wheelchairs. They don't feel well. Their feet are swollen because they have congestive heart failure and it hurts to walk.
Mm.
Or they're just, they say, oh, maybe I'm feeling better. I don't really need to go. Or mental capacity, just all these different reasons, right? And so they don't go. And then guess what happens? And then they're not taking their medication. 74% of seniors take their medication incorrectly after discharge in the first 7 days.
Mm.
And they wind up back in the hospital.
Mm.
We need to meet them where they're at. We
Right.
need to, so with Coordinista, what we enable is a nurse, a transitions of care nurse, to meet that person while they're in the hospital, form a relationship with them, put a plan of care together with them at that time, and then say, okay, when you're discharged within the first couple days, I'm going to come out to your house. If they're open to that, or it could be
Right.
telephone, but most
Right.
of the time they're open. If they know the nurse, if they see you, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And you're an advocate, you're there for them. And then that's the plan. Now you can go to their house. And this is how I was able to reduce readmissions by over 30%. So anybody listening who's in
Mm.
transition care, do this. Get the nurse to the home within the first 2 to 3 days. Make sure they get the right medicines. They have their appointments set up. Their follow-ups. They have the transportation set up. The nurse can help them with all of these things. And then, and Coordinista is the technology that provides the continuity of workflow and the data that's needed to do all these things. And there's nothing else like it.
So that's amazing. I think that you've just explained such a great example of how an elderly person would definitely benefit, and the nurses as well. How hard is it to, let's say that they take it on, and nurses aren't techies. So how does this nurse practitioner customize it? Is that something you guys do, or can they do it? Is it how do they make it their own?
Yes. Oh my goodness. I love that. So I am the last person you'd ever think to develop software because I think I think I'm half Amish because I don't like computers. I don't, I don't like technology. It's starting to grow on me. So I'm starting to like it more. But the whole way we built Coordinista was so be clinician friendly. And so that is kind of the cool part about it is like it's built with clinicians in mind, so they don't have to be techies. So 100% of nurses so far, the feedback that we've gotten doing
Yeah.
all these different surveys and stuff, 100% have said Coordinista will save them 1 to 2 hours every day.
Wow.
Yeah, 1 to 2 hours every
Huge.
day. 100% have said it's intuitive, and
Wow.
100% have said it will help their patient outcomes.
Oh gosh, that's
So
great.
as far as the customizable, we just make it comes down to that UI and the UX and really being very thoughtful from the clinician's perspective and understanding uh, how to make it so it's intuitive as possible for them. But
Perfect.
company sets up the admin side. So Coordinate is a platform with the council for the admin and supervisors who manage the care teams. And then the clinicians have their mobile app that they use while they're out in the field.
Now,
And
is that on their normal phone?
yeah,
It's on their regular Android or iPhone?
yep.
Oh, wow, that is so cool. That is what I love about this world that you are in. It's so innovative. You're leveraging pervasive technology that's already in everyone's hands. They don't have to get a special device. They're using their phone that they have on them all the time anyway, and they're using that same device to really improve their day and what they do. That's what I call really important innovation. What are some of the challenges? I'm sure this hasn't been easy. So when you went into this, can you tell us a little bit about, the challenges you had in coming to market and how did you overcome them? And then any stories you have regarding that overcomance.
Yeah. So, well, the first challenge was so I had this idea, and so I sketched it out on paper, like literally every screen, what if I touch this button and then another piece of paper, what does that look like, right? So I had my whole house full of all these papers all over. I didn't know how to bring software to market. So that was my first challenge is recruiting a team of advisors and people who know how to do this around me, right? And so then they said, well, if you're going to build technology, you have to let them know exactly what's in your mind so they know what to build. So I sketched it all out and then I taught myself how to create wireframes. So then I could be able to send it off to a developer to get a quote, So I had these like little early stage challenges, just personal growth. So after I did that, then I was able to start getting feedback from developers and adding quotes and then the other challenge was we're bootstrapping it. And so technology, especially in healthcare, can be the other challenges. It needs to be HIPAA compliant, cybersecurity, all of those different things, right? So it's not inexpensive to build an MVP in healthcare that it has to be to the level of quality and everything that a hospital would be willing to try out, or, you're putting patient information in here. So it has to have certain levels of standards. And so all of those different things, have to be really important or have been important to us from the beginning, building with HIPAA and security and privacy and all of that in mind. And then having to raise the dollars to get us to each milestone.
How did you manage that?
Yeah, so our first raise was family and friends and network. And fortunately, I have a friend in my network that was an engineer for like Bell Labs, Miter Corporation, and worked on some of the first mobile applications in communication, and was a very big proponent of decentralization of healthcare. And so he was the first investor that came in because he really saw that, hey, this is a really good idea, and I'd like to see this go forward. And so we just raised for milestones. And so, like I said, that first one was developing the visual, the click, the UI, the UX, getting market feedback. Then the second one was the functional mobile app, getting market feedback. And so, and then the network of investors just slowly expanded from there. And now we're looking to close our pre-seed round with institutional angel and venture capital investors right now.
Oh, fantastic. Wow, you've done the journey and you're still on the journey.
Yeah, and this is, I
Yeah.
mean, it's been so cool. I've loved, I didn't know I'd like product development so much. But I really have enjoyed it. It's technology is a whole new language, and it's cool to see how code, can bring something to life that can actually help people.
Yes.
It's super
Well,
exciting part of that.
it is exciting, and I know that you're making a difference. So tell us, you started this in Michigan, and you're an innovator in the state of Michigan. I know you're from the Detroit area.
Mhm.
However, I know you make your way around the state. So tell me about your innovative journey.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So I live in West Michigan now.
Oh,
And
that's right. Sorry,
yeah, no, but I'm from the Detroit area.
I
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah. And so I didn't know, so as a nurse, I didn't know about this innovative world, right? And so there was this lag time of time it took for me to get going because I was not plugged in with the different incubators and things like that that are around the state. But what I've come to learn now is and find as I have been starting to get connected, are there these hot spots across the state I've seen of innovation and ecosystems that are building that really help support early stage founders and startups. And so one of the ways I had gotten connected with an accelerator, Accelerate Health, who's been a great partner, and they
Where are
connect.
they out of?
So they have two locations, Flint and Kentucky. So I was part of their Flint cohort. And then right after that, they connect me to Traverse City, the TC New Tech. So my very first experience in like a local innovative community was in Traverse City. And I went up there for my very first pitch competition. And there's a story here that's really cool, I think. And I pitched and I won at Traverse City New Tech pitch. And there was this whole room, and it's in this beautiful opera house in Traverse City, and this whole room of like developers and innovators and investors, and this ecosystem, right? And I'm like, this is so cool. And then what happened was right behind me was a nurse who was sitting behind me in the audience, and we connected. And that nurse, I have chills, just think about, she ended up connecting me with a physical therapist in the area who ended up being our proof of concept client.
What? Oh, that's so
Yeah,
cool.
in
Yeah,
Traverse
I'm very
City.
aware of TC New Tech and all the work that they do. We had a wonderful week, Michigan Startup Week in March, and I
There.
experienced that, and it
Yeah,
was so much energy, with 20 Fathoms and
yeah,
Oops and the Opera House and the way that the chamber with TC Connect, they
yes.
have quite an ecosystem, and I have to just agree with you 100% that Traverse City's got something extremely unique and special going on.
They do. And so to getting plugged into those different organizations that you just mentioned, 20 Fathoms and Oops and all that has been like those kind of ecosystems. In Grand Rapids has a strong ecosystem as well. Plugging into the right way and others in Grand Rapids has been good. And those can help accelerate a founder's journey to market and to get ideas and the support, even what you're doing here to support innovators. It's part of that getting that word out. And as a founder, just we have our head down building our products,
So
go
true.
to market. Like, you know, we have to be focused. So we need that support that's coming around us to help us get the word out about what we're doing.
Wow,
So
that is such an exciting. Now, how can we be a part of what you're doing? I know that some people were listening to this podcast are probably just wondering, how do I connect with Cindy? How do I learn more about Coordinista? Maybe a nurse is watching and they want to talk to you about how they can actually deploy this in their own world. How do we get a hold of you?
yeah, all of that, please. Most people do know a nurse or a social worker or somebody. And so we love empowering them and getting feedback. So you can find us on our website is www.coordinista.com. Think barista, but Coordinista. It's your local, you know, friendly care coordinator support. And then you can contact me at Bauer, Bauer, at coordinista.com. And that's Coordinista.com. I'm also on LinkedIn as well. So yeah, I'd love to
Well,
talk
this
to
has
you.
been an amazing podcast. I just have been sitting on the edge of my seat listening to your story, your grandpa, your dad, your racing, and now you're really improving the quality of life for not only nurses but their patients. And I always kind of get a little teary-eyed when I hear these stories when you're making such a big difference in the world. And God bless you and good luck to you. And don't be a stranger. We'll want to hear back from you and see how things are going. We'll give you a year or so, and hopefully you'll agree to come back and visit.
Of course, looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, we're going to say goodbye and thank you for everything and have goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. So.